What's up, YouTube? Sideline Eli here with my boy Vic. Welcome back to Sideline Chatter with Vic, episode 8. Today might be a little bit of a shorter episode, but we'll see. We're going to talk some NFL here, particularly the conference championship results. We're going to give you guys some Super Bowl predictions. We're also going to talk a little bit about the NFL Honor Awards that just happened the other night. And then we're going to wrap this up with a nice, neat bow and talk some NBA trades because the NBA trade line was absolutely bonkers. We're going to kick things off today with some Chiefs, Bills, AFC Conference Championship. Vic, what you thinking? How you feeling?
I think the Chiefs are paying the refs by a good margin. Remember I told you earlier in the podcast episodes. If you haven't watched them, go check them out. About the referees, fixed games. It's kind of hard to not say that some of these calls are kind of a little sketchy. Josh Allen got the first down in my eyes.
They're gambling.
That's what I'm telling you. And of course, you know that Patrick Mahomes and them are going to say, "No, the Chiefs are doing a great job. They're doing what they can." When you're winning like that, of course they're doing a great job. Even if statistically they're getting less calls, they don't get off. They don't get called off sides like everyone else. They line up off of the line of scrimmage anyways. They jump early. There's been video proof ever since week 1 of the off like one of the offensive linemen on like the far edge. He always goes like half a second early.
Not
He
just on
never
the
gets called
Chiefs,
for
but
that.
that seems to be like a big thing going around the league. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've seen that a lot this season. But I do agree with you to an extent.
It's crazy, but like I remember it all started with the Chiefs because they kept getting away with it, and now if they can get away with it, who else can get away with it, right? So watching that game though, it was a great Bills Chiefs game. They always have banger playoff games, regardless if you're a fan or not. They're always good, but it's just hard not to say like the refs aren't on the Chiefs side this year.
I mean, that was a clear
It
first
really
down by
is.
Josh Allen. It was 100%.
Clear first down. I think there was like a roughing call against the Bills too. It's either a hold or a ref that shouldn't have been called. But when you're playing two against one, you fighting the odds. Josh Allen, he had a decent game. Dawson Knox couldn't make that catch,
I saw
but
that.
that's a tough catch to make. Anyways, you're running back. You're already falling down. Like it's not like the Mark Andrews catch where it was like right in the pocket. It's like he has to play catch up on top of Josh Allen just chucking it in the air.
Yeah. I mean, that was D-line broke through pretty quickly. That was definitely a panic throw. I mean, a good throw for a panic throw, but yeah, that was a tough one to bring in.
Yeah, so I mean, should I be shocked that the Chiefs won? No, but I am because they got bailed out again, and that's been their whole season. They've been getting bailed out of a lot of games. Refs, luck, or just pure Patrick Mahomes magic. It's pretty much just been their entire season, and what got them to the Super Bowl. That and the Taylor Swift money, the referees.
T Swifty, all the Swifties doing their job. Shout out to them, I guess.
But I don't know. It was a good game though. I have nothing. You have anything more you want to add on to that?
Not a whole lot. I actually didn't get. Well, it's not that I didn't get to watch it. I was so pissed off from my own game that football just wasn't really something that was something I was wanting to watch at the moment. So I caught a lot of bits and pieces, after the fact on social media. Like I said, I did see the Josh Allen play over and over and over again. I saw the catch or lack thereof, of course, over and over again. But like you said, from what I saw and just looking at the stat sheet, definitely another just great Bills Chiefs game. I am getting more sketchy when it comes to this whole rigged or not scenario. And I am, I don't like diving off the deep end of conspiracy theories too much, but it is getting harder and harder to ignore altogether. I mean, we've seen different leagues. It was really bad with the NBA, but we've seen in the NFL with Calvin Ridley a couple years ago, players are betting on games. And these guys are making 10 times the money that the officials are making. It's like, do aliens exist, right? Like, we don't know what's out there. Like, how can you honestly say that there's nothing out there except for us? It's kind of like the same boat. It's just like, can we really sit here and say that we know for certainty the refs aren't gambling on games when we know the players are? And the players, as I just said, make 10 times more money than they do. And obviously, if refs are gambling on games, which they're human beings, so I'm inclined to believe they are, of course, they can throw some flags or ignore some things that might persuade big moments in games. And that was something that I saw some people talk about. I'm sure you saw, was it Shefty kind of tweeted out some stuff that kind of implied that he also thinks maybe that there's some sketchy stuff going on with the Chiefs, and a lot of people started coming to the defense of that. And I don't know if it was, I don't want to say names because I don't want to be wrong, but one of the another prominent like NFL guy kind of basically said this is ridiculous, like blah 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 blah, and he pulled up. I think the Chiefs were something like the 15th most penalized team, right there in the middle over the regular season, and the Rams were the least penalized team last season. But other that kind of just made things worse because a lot of people were like, okay, so you're telling me that the Chiefs were middle of the road when it comes to discipline, but they're the least penalized team in the playoffs? How did they just suddenly go from 15 to best? You know, and obviously there aren't 15 teams left at that point, but
The announcers are also calling it out too live
oh
because
yeah,
they're even like this,
hmm,
like they're like, "There's no way that these are calls."
which is interesting. Um, but it is. It's getting harder and harder to deny that. Um, the thing is, though, is that they're running into a powerhouse here, and flags can only help you so much. And, you know, speaking on that, I think that's a perfect little segue here into the NFC Championship. Because when I say they're running into a powerhouse, I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. I said,
Before you start though, I do want to start this one off because I'm like an outsider. You know, like this is your team,
nah,
right?
go ahead, go ahead.
And I was watching this game when I was playing poker on Sunday, and it was looking really good, like a decent game to the second quarter until like the very end of the second quarter, and then it kind of just got away from you guys. But watching Saquon rip a 60-yard run off the first play after you guys just ran like an 18 play drive, that's tough. Now your offense has to go right back out there and get right back to work and not, lose the ball on downs or turn it over or whatnot. And obviously, you're more critical on how your team was. Obviously, a 50 bomb in the playoffs is ridiculous anyway. Like that's just insane to me.
55.
That, that I'm surprised they didn't even like show a little bit of like grace because at some point it was kind of like, all right, now you're just running up the score a little bit.
It's a divisional
And,
rival,
and
man. I wouldn't be
in my
surprised either.
opinion, I was like, in my opinion, I was kind of like, this is kind of getting a little out of hand. Not in the Commanders' sense, but more just like, come on now, like what are we doing? Especially when they were tush pushing that touchdown that took like 16 minutes because you guys guys kept
That
jumping
was
off
funny.
sides, trying to
My
check
guy
it out.
Frankie Louvu, man, try to Troy Polamalu them boys.
And then the rest were like, all right, we're gonna give them the touchdown. It's like, well, just give it to them. They're gonna score anyways. They're like half a centimeter from the touchdown. What's another flag gonna do? Like they're already down 20. But obviously, aside from that game being a complete total blowout, I know you're more critical, but I do think that this was a win season for you guys. Like this was a big win for you guys in terms of like where you got at with the players you had, how much you spent because you really guys really didn't spend a lot of money. You guys are still top 3 in the draft cap and like capital for next season. And I know the word for it, I just can't think of it right now. Um, the cap space, that's right. Total cap space. And you guys remind me of like the 2002 Oakland A's. Have you ever seen the Money Moneyball?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty much like that. Where like they went off a system and pretty much like won. They only spent like 200,000 to win a game,
yeah.
much because they had no money. And I think a lot of teams are going to be looking at what you guys did, maybe trying to implement that system of let's get a star rookie quarterback, let's get a decent receiver, let's get some decent running back help, and let's try to recreate what the Commanders did because they just went on it was a generational run. Even though you guys didn't make it to the Super Bowl, you guys weren't even slated to make it to the playoffs. And I think that alone is a win in my book for you guys.
We're projected to
Obviously
win
your
6 games.
defense has its issues. What team doesn't? Well, every team's going to have some kind of issue going into the season, playoffs, all that. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore for you isn't a keen future piece. Even though I feel like that hamstring, he never got over it.
Oh, I'm gonna get to it.
And but from the outside looking in, it's a great season. You guys are looking better for next year. And this is just kind of a game where it's like it reminds me of NASCAR 2022. Ross Chastain got second place to Joey Logano. He was only 235 feet from winning that championship because Logano had his teammate Ryan Blaney block him. And Trackhouse, they have a line outside of their place, their main facility, where it marks the 235 feet away from their facility, saying, "This is how far were from our first championship. Let's
Damn.
turn that 235 down to zero." So I feel like this is your 235 moment,
I like that.
and
I like that analogy. I like
this
that a
is
lot.
where not just next season, but for the future, you try to close that gap from that 235 and get to that zero and finally get that championship. But that's how I feel about it. Um, Obviously, it's going to be a big offseason for you guys. You guys are going to be attracting a lot of main stars, whether it be Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn, more defensive pieces or whatnot. And I'll let you take over for this part.
Yeah, I pissed some
Thoughts?
people. I pissed some Commanders fans off on Twitter. I never aimed to be the guy that is necessarily loved. I tell it how it is. I really wasn't too keen on Joe Witt Jr. for most of the season, our defensive coordinator. Um, and at times I wasn't really high on Dan Quinn either. Not necessarily because I think he's a bad coach. It's just throughout the season there were some decisions that were made at critical moments. Whether it was to punt the ball here, to go for it here, calling a timeout, not calling a timeout. And I feel like he kind of bungled a lot. But he did kind of, I think, put a lot of that to bed down the tail stretch of the season into the playoffs. So I really don't blame Dan Quinn. And I also had my beef with Cliff Kingsbury when he got hired. I think we talked about that. I didn't want him. I mean, I also don't run from my takes. I never have and I never will. And he flipped the script on me. He changed my mind a lot. He did. I completely 180'd on Cliff. Never wavered on Joe Witt Jr. I still think he should be fired. And let's dive into this. So as you mentioned, well, we talked about it. You know, coming into the game, Jalen Hurts had an injury to his knee. It was talked about being like a minor PCL thing. He did wear a knee brace. And I still, to this day, I'm not going to change my mind. I don't think he's the greatest passer in the world. I don't even know if he'd be a top 10 passer in this league. Somewhere between 11 and 16. It's his mobility that when you factor that in, makes him a top 10 type of quarterback. But the mobility wasn't there like it should have been with the knee injury. So you would think, as a defensive coordinator, that you would sit there and go, okay, they got the best running back in the league. Jalen Hurts, not the greatest passer in the league. His mobility is dangerous, but his knee's a little banged up. You would think that you would just do whatever you can to stop Saquon Barkley. And I know that's not necessarily a task that can be done, but what I mean by that is just loading that box. Whatever you got to do. If you got to pretty much tell everybody to focus on Saquon and let your cornerbacks do what they got to do one-on-one on the outside, that's what you got to do. You got to sit in a zone, do what you got to do. So to let Saquon go 60 plus to the house on the very first play, I was already worried. I said, okay, Joe Witt had one job and he's already failing at it miserably. A guy that I already don't believe in. And Saquon didn't annihilate us like I thought he would. 15 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns. However, as a team, 36 carries, 229 yards, 6.4 yards per carry, 7 rushing touchdowns. You had one job, bro. One job. Focus on the run and make Jalen Hurts beat you through the air. Because Jalen Hurts isn't going to outpass Jaden Daniels. I mean, statistically, technically, he kind of didn't actually. But the game was so wide open that he had so many opportunities and easy plays that he had a pretty good game back there. Not taking that from him. But it was their running game that did the damage. So again, I knew it wasn't going to be stopped. But again, you had one job and you didn't just fail. You failed embarrassingly, miserably. I don't want Joe Witt Jr. back. I don't. I think he's going to be back, and that's disappointing. We spoke on Marshawn Lattimore a lot throughout the season. I went on a rant, a tirade on Twitter. I already was unhappy with Lattimore, but then he sat there in his post-game interview and he took zero responsibility. He blamed it on the 3 turnovers, 4 if you want to talk about Jaden's interception at the end. He's not wrong. Like, yeah, that's why we lost the game, but like, you were terrible. That was also why we lost the game. You have gift wrapped them points. That's also why we lost. At no point did he say, yeah, I got to play better. Jaden Daniels is a rookie, and he would say, yeah, I had to play better.
It's kind of wild to say, like, defense, like from a defensive standpoint, like said 7 rushing touchdowns, and you're obviously like they had like one or 2 passing touchdowns,
One.
whatever. Because that was like the only one to AJ Brown, I think.
Yep.
But
One
even
Lattimore.
still, it's kind of like you gotta realize that like you guys gave up a 60-yard run. The offense had to go right back on the field.
Now, the flip side of that is their defense had to go right back on the field, and I think we did actually score. No, we didn't. A lot.
No, that's kind of when it was like, oh, this is going to be a rough one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was worried. But I did pick us to win. Like, again, it's there on the internet for everyone to see. Because like we had talked about, the Eagles weren't playing their best ball leading up to this game. So, of course, they decided to have their best game of the season in this game. Go us. But at the same time, I didn't expect to win. I picked us to win. But I always, I said it, I think, somewhere around December. I said, yeah, the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. They're too stacked. And I pretty much held true to that all the way up until after the Packers game, where I'm like, oh, they're not looking too hot. They weren't looking so hot down the stretch. The Packers game was kind of ugly. And then I watched the Rams game, and I'm like, okay, maybe they're just fading. I don't know.
Did you see that the Hail Mary from the Bears game was the play of the year?
I did. And we're going to talk about that here soon.
That one play you just hate.
Yeah. But overall, I'm not upset that we lost to the Eagles because they are the better team in every position except for quarterback and linebacker. And while they do have a first-team All-Pro linebacker, Commanders had 2 second-team All-Pro linebackers. Probably, I mean, I say probably, they had the best linebacker duo in the NFL. No other team had 2 All-Pros, and Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. But every single other position, the Eagles are better in. So I tried to explain to people, I'm not mad that we lost. I'm mad that we lost embarrassingly. And I was saying that this is one of the most embarrassing sports losses all time. And everyone, it's not. You're new to football. So I just started asking those people. I said, name me 5. Name me 5 more embarrassing losses. And to the surprise of not me and I don't know anybody else, no one proceeded to do it. Because it might not have been the Super Bowl, but it's still a conference championship, still a championship game. You gave up 55, excuse me. You lost by 32 to a divisional rival. The Eagles are never going to let us live this down. We're never going to hear the end of this. At least not as long as I'm still alive. Anytime we play each other at 55-23, bro, we own you. 55-23. Like, this was embarrassing. And everything you said was true. Yes, the season was insane. Yes, it was incredible. All of that is true. And I'm not displeased with the overall body of work. I think the future is super bright, but this was disgustingly embarrassing and absolutely should cost somebody their job. Particularly with Marshawn Lattimore. I already was very much so not happy with the guy. The football player. I don't know the guy personally. He could be a great guy. I don't know. But the football player, when he gave that interview and took zero responsibility, it's on Twitter. I said, I have made it I am his number 1 hater now. So let's be his number 1 hater. I actually put together a thread on Twitter of all the times just this season that he got absolutely cooked. Just cooked. But my main thing is, He's about to turn, 29 years old, I do believe. And dating back to 2022. So 2022, he played 7 games. 2023, he played 10 games. 2024, this past season, he played 9 games. This dude has basically missed half the season for 3 years in a row. He turns 29 years old, I think in a couple of months, and he's due $18 million. I don't want him on the team. I really don't. The only way I will be happy if he makes the team is if they maybe move him to deep safety and give that a try, because that has worked for a lot of people later in their careers. And going back to the hamstring that you mentioned, I have a couple of issues with that, because when I say Marshawn Lattimore has been horrendous, well, what about the Saints game, bro? They didn't even talk. What about the Lions game? He was lights out in the Lions game. Okay, sure. So how was he lights out a week ago, but absolute dog water the following week if his hamstring's bothering him? He hurt his hamstring again the Lions game? No, we didn't hear about it. So what is it? Is his hamstring injured or not? And let's just say it is. We just talked about it. For the past 3 years, something on this guy is always freaking hurt. He's always hurt. So like people, I'm begging you guys, stop using, not you necessarily, but Commanders fans, stop using the hamstring, because it does nothing good. Here's the thing. If his hamstring bothered him, like I said, why didn't it bother him in Detroit? And let's just say if his hamstring is bothering him so bad, why did Joe Witt Jr. keep putting him on the field and not take him off the field? Something ain't clicking. And that's the money or not. They can cut him with no dead cap hit. So that's my thing.
You know how it is, though.
It is. I fully agree with you.
More.
But it's like
paid more. They get the minutes, even if they shouldn't.
They do.
They still earn those minutes.
But like I said, I'm begging Commanders fans to stop using the hamstring as an excuse, because all it does is make either Marshawn Lattimore or Joe Witt Jr. look terrible. Because again, it didn't bother him in Detroit apparently, and he did. He played a great game in Detroit. I mean, great is still subjective, because I mean, yeah, you didn't hear his name called, and he played great. He played great. I'm not disagreeing with you, but the Lions still scored 31 points. And they still had a receiver go for over 100. They had another receiver take an end around for like 60-some yards and a touchdown. Yeah, he played better. But again, they still scored 31 points. Eagles scored 55 points. I personally, if you were like, hey, Eli, what is one, if you could have any one wish of yours this offseason for the Commanders, what is it? I'm not wishing that we get T. Higgins. I'm not wishing that we somehow trade miraculously for the first overall pick and give up nothing for it. I want Marshawn Lattimore on a one-way ticket to freaking, I don't care. Send him to any other team in the league. Preferably send him to Dallas, New York, or even Philly. I would love that. Because the dude is cooked. And if I'm wrong, I'll eat the cat poop word to Ron Burgundy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think I can sleep a lot better at night if Marshawn Lattimore is not on this team next season. But again, I'm not down on the team by any means. I would just preferably like a new defensive coordinator and 2 new cornerbacks. Mikey is good. I call him Mikey a lot, even though his name's Mike. I have a couple of people that I grew up with that their name is Mikey, so it's really hard for me to just say Mike. Mike Sanderstill is fine on the outside. Love him there, but we need somebody to replace Lattimore, and we definitely need a slot corner. So those are my 2 big wish lists for the defense this offseason. New defensive coordinator, new outside corner to replace Lattimore, a guy in the slot.
Defensive line's fine?
No, I mean, those are my only, trust me, that's not my only wish list. Those are just my 2 biggest. The D-line needs some improvements big time. I would love to go out and get Myles Garrett, but it sounds like the Browns aren't ready to play ball. We'll see how that goes.
The offensive line?
Well, if you want the take on it, my actual priority list in order: number 1, Marshawn Lattimore, get him out of here. I'll play for the pain ticket myself. 2 new corners. Probably need a left tackle, although we had a rookie out there and he had some ups and he had some downs.
That's the guy from Illinois, right?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm having a brain fart with his name so bad, especially since I like him. But like I said, he had some good highs, but he also had some low lows, especially in the playoffs. Could probably use a left guard. We're good at center. We're good at right guard. Andrew Wiley's questionable at right tackle. He's not the greatest in pass protection, but he's serviceable, and he's an absolute bruiser in the run game. Definitely need a free safety. That's if we re-sign Jeremy Chin, which I think we should do. He had a very good season. Some people want to replace Bobby Wagner. I think that's silly. Second team All-Pro. Yeah, he's 30, but what? London Fletcher played till he was 38. We definitely need a home run hitter at running back. And I can't believe I forgot all this time because I would knock this like way up this list, but we need another wide receiver. Like without a doubt, that needs to happen. And we probably need a tight end too. But obviously all these things aren't going to be done. So if I had to pick 4 of them.
He's older, but he's still.
He did. He picked it up a lot down the stretch of the season too. But if I had to pick 4 of those things, 2 new corners, wide receiver, home run hitter at running back, offensive line upgrades. Because the D-line they weren't bad at rushing the passer. They weren't elite, but they weren't bad. We were just atrocious in the run game. So it's hard to pick, but I think if you improve everything I just said that the offense will be so potent that they're going to be hard to keep up with.
Like I said earlier, you got the cap space to cover.
We do, but one thing you mentioned that a lot of people might try to copy our blueprint, it's sketchy, and here's why. A lot of those guys were on 1-year deals. So we have a lot of guys that if we do re-sign them, someone did the numbers, and I don't want to just be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but to basically re-sign the expected players, so the Jeremy Chins and whatnot, I think we were looking at spending like 20-something million, like 20-something, 25-ish million. And then when
that's
you
not including that, because some of those players, like obviously on 1-year deals, they get another couple years, but they might only get like another million or so guaranteed and more team friendly like type deals, like bonuses and whatnot. So I really don't I take those lightly because it's always depending on like their age and their situation. Be like, okay, maybe I'll just have to take this and just gamble with that type deal rather than like, oh, here I'm going to get this type of guaranteed money, and if I don't, I'll go somewhere else type deal. And if they go somewhere else, you can always find another cheap guy who's wanting.
It's not, but I think it's like one of those things where it's an expected number, like an estimated number. I mean,
yeah.
So it's like an estimated somewhere between 20 to 25 million, and then you got to factor in I think another like 10 to 12 million for your rookie class. So then you're up to 30 million. I think we have like 70 million that we can actually spend. So you're already about half of that. That's like one splash player, assuming they don't restructure or get rid of anybody, like Jonathan Allen's a candidate for that possibility. I think Andrew Wiley is actually a candidate for that as well. So that they have some moves they could make. But I said
to me, it is a good benefit though to be like one of the top 3 in cap space.
No, absolutely.
You can always, because if you spend that 20 mil, you still got what 80 mil left.
And with Jaden Daniels, I think we have 70 or 80 total. I'd have to double check that. Guys are going to want to come play with Jaden Daniels, so that's huge. I mean, a lot of people are going to want to play with him. And of course, I'm never going to advocate for losing on purpose, and obviously, I wouldn't trade this season for anything. But there was a double-edged sword because I don't really know how to say this without sounding like a complete Debbie Downer, but I saw someone on Twitter basically say this team played with a horseshoe up its ass all season, and I'm inclined to agree. The Hail Mary play, there was just a lot of things that seemed to work in our favor, whether we want to like it or not. The Tampa Bay game, no Chris Godwin. Go look at what Chris Godwin did to us week 1. We saw how bad Lattimore was in Tampa Bay. Now imagine how awful it could have been if when they finally took him off Mike Evans, if he had to go to the other side and guard Chris Godwin.
To be fair, though, the Bucs did play without Chris Godwin for like the rest of the year.
Yeah, but
so it's not like
it was a 3-point.
It
was, but it was a 3-point game that we won off a doink at the end. They kicked our ass week 1 with Chris Godwin, so that's my point. If Chris Godwin was out there with that defense, I hate to say it, but I don't think we would have made it past that round. We would have
But
been
week
out.
that in my opinion, that same week one though, you guys had that was your first game with Jaden Daniels. You guys were first game with Dan Quinn. So you guys are pretty
None of
much
those guys
freshmen
had a
trying
bad
to
game.
get this
Like
figured
Jaden
out.
Daniels had a fine game though. I mean, we can actually backtrack it. It wasn't,
I
you
know
know,
that. I'm just saying though, because
the
it's like,
greatest.
those first couple of games, it's like teams are trying to find their footing, pick it up. Whereas like the Bucks, they're just picking up where they left off from the season before.
Jaden
The only
Daniels
difference
had
is that
what?
injuries picked up for them.
260 something total yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's honestly a very Jaden Daniel-esque game. I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's the same thing for the Bucks. They had the gel and the cohesion. They had the same time, same amount of season that we had.
So like
It's
this
hard
is
to
how
do
I
the what ifs. It really is.
so
But
so like down. This is like where the Bucks were week one, in my opinion, and this is where you guys were obviously slated before the year. Um, like you guys were like right down here. They were already here. They had just beat the Eagles in the playoffs and damn near beat the who was that, the 49ers or Lions in the second round.
I'm not sure.
It was one of those two teams. So they were already like established. They already had their same guys. But as the season went on, you guys kept going, getting better and better and better. Because Jay Daniels is getting better, the team's getting better, Dan Quinn's calling the plays a lot better, and you guys are winning. And I think that really slated for them to like for you guys to be more on their level rather than them drop down without Godwin, because they were still winning games without Godwin. They lost him early in the year, so it's not like they were just like bummed out the entire year. There's just one less receiver. Obviously, Chris Godwin's a great receiver and all, and they had those 4 games without uh, Mike Evans, not Mike Williams, and I still think that they were on that level, but there's no better they could have been versus the ceiling that you guys had to get better.
I would fully agree with you if we went out and beat them like we beat Detroit. We won by 3 on a doink at the end. If we go to overtime, we might not win that game. So yeah, I hate to say it, but if I'm sticking to it, if that one player plays, I don't think we would have made it out the wild card. And then we go to the divisional round. Lions 16 defensive players on IR. I mean, you play who you play. But that's the horseshoe thing where yeah, they lost guys throughout the season, just like you said, the Bucks lost, Chris Godwin. But again, that's the horseshoe. You play the Bucks without their second wide receiver who made a massive difference week one. Again, if we went out, put up 30 something points, beat the Bucks by 12, 14 points, I would fully agree with that take. We had to doink a field goal in at the end to win. That one guy changes that game. It does. A 3-point game that you won on a last second field goal, yeah, that one guy would have changed it. If the Lions had even half of those guys on defense, that game's probably a lot different. But we won that a lot more convincingly, and we were red hot that game. Everything clicked that game. So we very much so may have still won that game. But that's when people, the Hail Mary, all of those things added up. So I feel like as happy as I am with the season, were we really a potent 12-win team? When you look at the other teams that win 12, 13, 14 games, do we really stack up with them? Because that's what we're picking now. We're picking 29th. When I think we honestly really need a top 15 pick. So that's a double-edged sword. I wouldn't trade the season for the world. But at the same time, we're now picking 29th in the draft. And how many, if we go through, let's just go through real quick. Texans, this is a divisional round. Texans, Chiefs, Commanders, Lions, Rams, Eagles, Ravens, Bills. How many of those teams, Bills, Ravens, Eagles, Rams, Lions, Texans, Chiefs? Texans would be the only answer. How many of those teams need 2 corners, a free safety, 2 or 3 D linemen, 2 or 3 O linemen, another running back, a tight end, and a wide receiver? That's what I mean.
Running back's not going in the first round.
No, he's not. But
outside of Jonty, and
that's kind of what I mean. How does the Commanders actually stack up to those teams right there? The only team that I'm like, yeah, we're definitely better than them. Like, yeah, we won the games we won. But the only team I'm looking at off this divisional round, I'm like, yeah, we're definitely better than them when healthy, is the Texans. And that's even close. Because the Texans, when healthy, have some potent wide receivers, and outside of Mike, our cornerbacks are some.
Yeah,
So
they
it's
lost
like
Stephon Diggs and
that was all when
Tank
healthy
Dell's
though.
just
When healthy,
major injuries this
that's what
year.
I'm saying. When healthy, the Texans are the only team I would be like, yeah, I think we could be better than them. So that's what I mean by like it's a double-edged sword where amazing season, but now we're picking 29th when I think we needed a substantially higher draft pick because we do have a lot of holes. And that's even if we bring back a lot of these guys, we still have some pretty big holes. So it's like we'll see how that goes. But I'm not ready to lock in another NFC Championship appearance. You know, we gotta see what these off-season moves look like. You know, how much cap space they want to spend. I have faith that they're going to hit in the draft, even though we are picking 29th. You know, I do trust the guys in charge there. I trust Adam Peters. So it's going to be nice. The roster we just had is going to be the worst roster Jaden Daniels. I don't want to say ever. Everyone says ever. And I kind of said that too for a while. But when you really think about it, I mean, we don't know what the roster's going to look like in 8 years. I mean, we'll see. But depends on how they spend now, the draft picks and all that. But at least for the rookie contract minimum, this was the worst roster Jaden Daniels ever going to have. But Terry McLaurin is also 30 in September, like right when the season starts. So definitely important to get a wide receiver too, utilize the rest of his prime, and fill as many of the holes as we can. Because 55 to 32 was, or I'm sorry, what was it? 55 to 23 is just sad. I mean, looking at the playoffs, that was the worst beatdown for the entire playoffs. No one lost that bad. The closest would be either our
Game.
Not really, because they only lost by 14, and they turned the ball over 5 times. We turned it over 4, technically only 3. Like, again, Jane Daniels threw the last interception, but it's one of those interceptions where it's like, look, I'm going to curse here, but fuck it, we lost. So I'm just throwing the ball. I'm just chucking things up. That's what that was. That wasn't, if the game was close, he wouldn't have thrown that same ball. That wouldn't have been it. You can never say that, but I promise you, if the game was close, he wouldn't have thrown that ball. It just is what it is. The only other beatdown that was that embarrassing was either Bills Broncos. That would be it, 31-7, and then the Texans beat the Chargers 32-12. But none of those are 55-23 against a divisional rival. So that was the biggest beatdown in the entire playoffs. But with that being said, it is what it is. Can't harp on it forever, and hopefully we don't have to deal with anything like that moving forward, because as we said, the roster is only going to get better. So,
speaking of championships, though,
we have exactly the Super Bowl that I don't think anybody wanted to see. I don't know about you, but I know I didn't. Judging by social media, a lot of people did not want. This was like literally the one outcome nobody wanted. Like nobody. But we have it. We're here. Kansas City, Philly, again. So at this point, you're either rooting for the Eagles, which I would never do, or you're rooting for a three-peat, right? I'm going to root for the three-peat, but I'm going to say this. So the next episode is going to be interesting. I'm not watching the Super Bowl. For the first time since I've been watching Super Bowls, I'm not watching it. Because as we talked about it at the very beginning of the episode, it's questionable why the Chiefs are here. There was some really bad calls in our game as well. It's not why we lost 55-23. But like, for example, which I actually kind of liked it because I'm Marshawn Lattimore's biggest hater. But I don't know if you saw this, but there was a play where AJ Brown basically instigated a fight with Lattimore, ripped his helmet off, and Lattimore didn't even really do anything. He didn't really go to the hands, to the face. He didn't take his helmet off. He didn't throw a punch. Not only did they flag Marshawn Lattimore, but they didn't flag AJ Brown. Yes. And then the NFL fined AJ Brown for that play. So it's like, what are we doing here with the officiating, But I have no interest in watching this game because it's either the Chiefs and having to look at Taylor Swift every 35 seconds, questioning if every call the refs make is legit, or I got to watch the Eagles win another Super Bowl. I just have zero interest. So if we run it down real quick, we are now officially tied with our predictions. We are both sitting at 7-5. I am going to go Kansas City, and I'm going to go some stuff. I'm going to go 35-24 because I hate the Eagles.
Well, this is gonna be fun for you because I'm a betting man and I've already put money on this game.
Ooh, okay.
Uh, Bet responsibly. Don't bet like me. I got money on the Eagles winning. My
Not a
point
bad
spread for
pick.
them
It's
is
not.
my point spread for them is at least to beat the Chiefs by 3.5. But obviously, the Chiefs are favored by like 1.5 points anyway, so
Are
it's
they
pretty
really?
like neck. It's pretty neck and neck. Um, I got the Eagles winning about like 37-20.
37.
I don't think the Chiefs offense can handle CJ Cooper DeJean, who's having a crazy year. He might score a running back touchdown. To be honest with you, because he does punt returns and kick returns as well. He's kind of like my sleeper pick to score this weekend.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
no,
probably went too high, but
I think the run game's going to be too much for them, as it's been for every team. Like no amount of referees can stop Saquon Barkley.
nah, he's that dude.
But that's my pick. Hopefully, I one of us wins it.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are probably going to win. I'm just not going to. I refuse to pick them.
And then I know we're kind of like crucial on time right now.
No, we're good. We're at 40. We're at 40 minutes. We're good. Talk a little,
I
fly
mean
through
on
some
my
NFL honors. Oh, okay.
on my end. I gotta be out soon.
All right. Let's rattle these off real quick. Just agree or disagree. MVP Josh Allen.
Yeah, agree.
I disagree.
Mostly because I didn't agree with Lamar last year winning MVP.
I
But
agree with that.
I also thought Josh Allen had a MVP caliber season that you can't it deserved to go noticed.
I'm not mad that Josh won. I just think Lamar should have won. But again, I do agree with you. Last year, Josh should have won over Lamar. So it's like,
Last year I thought Christian McCaffrey should have got it, but I know
honestly, if you ask me, Brady
running backs don't get
Daniels was the
MVP.
MVP. Or my second MVP would have been Justin Herbert, to be completely honest with you. And I don't even really care for Justin Herbert.
Brandon Daniels didn't play last year.
No, I'm talking about, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about this MVP. Last year, yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, I wouldn't have been upset with, but I don't know. Lamar had a crazy season, but that's what was crazy. Lamar had an even better season this year, one of the best seasons all time, and won no awards. That's just, I mean, he was first team All Pro, but he won no
I mean,
awards here. That's crazy.
statistically, Joe Burrow had one of the best years.
You're not wrong. Coach of the year, Kevin O'Connell. Agree or disagree?
Agree. Sam Darnold being coming back and being a crazy quarterback for. I mean, the Vikings won like 14
Yeah,
games with Sam Darnold. That's insane to even think about. So I would say that's well deserved. I know he's Dan Quinn, Dan Campbell,
I thought it
Nick
should have been one of
Sirianni,
the
all those,
Dans, not Nick Sirianni,
but
but I think it should have been one of the
but
Dans.
it doesn't. But I do think that Kevin O'Connell was a great choice.
I'm not mad at it. I'm not, like you said. I think both the Commanders and the Vikings were picked to win like 6 to 7 games, and they both went crazy. 2 more wins over the Commanders is pretty impressive. 14 wins to 12. And then the Lions weren't that bad last year. In fact, they were really good. So I get it. I just still think it's one of my least I don't hate it, but I do think it should have been one of the Dans. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse.
That's
I actually agree with that. Yeah, I do. Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Burrow.
eh,
We talked about
50-50.
this a little bit before we started. Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. He had a wrist injury, right? Like, what did he really come back from? Whatever. But his season was insane. So I'm glad he won something because, again, his season was freaking insane.
Yeah.
Offensive Player of the Year, Saquon Barkley. Fully agree.
Yeah, I fully agree too. It's just like Jamar Chase got stuck with a triple crown and
Yeah, that is very
couldn't
true.
muster that nothing because he's the only other player that could have got it other
Yeah.
than Joe Burrow.
I was glad
And
to see it wasn't a quarterback, but I think Saquon absolutely deserved it.
100%.
Defensive player of the year, Patrick Surtain II. Fully agree. And I really
I
love him.
agree. He only got like 10% of targets.
Yeah,
He was they were not he was locked down all year. Broncos I told the Broncos defense, even though it didn't look like it in that playoff game, really good. Sean Payton has really picked that team up post Russell Wilson era. Bo Nix is looking like a stud. I think he's gonna have a breakout year next year, and I think the
Oh,
Broncos
yeah.
they're definitely gonna be a playoff team next year.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Especially if they can add some weapons for Bo. I think Pat Surtain is like a lot of people were talking about Sauce Gardner. But honestly, Pat Surtain's like been the closest thing to Revis Island that I've seen in quite some time since Revis himself. Offensive Rookie of the Year. This was never in question. Jaden Daniels, of course, I agree. But honestly, this hasn't been much of a question since probably week 4 or 5, I think. I wouldn't have been upset if they gave it to Brock Bowers. But
If Jaden didn't go on the run that he did, I think Brock Bowers would have got that because statistically he's the best tight end in the league right now,
yeah, he was first team
and
All
that's his
Pro.
first year too.
He did get like something insane, like 25% of like target, like 25% of like offensive targets like went to him or something crazy like that because he's really all they had.
I mean,
So
it felt like higher, but he was doing it with no one good at quarterback. Not even B tier quarterbacks. He had Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell,
Gardner
and
Minshew's
like some
not that
others.
bad. Like I'm not saying he's a starting quarterback, but I
He's
hate the
not.
Gardner slander because like he's not bad.
I like Gardner
He's
too.
just not
I
very
think
good. There's a difference.
yeah.
Assistant coach of the year, Ben Johnson. I'm not going to pretend to know every assistant coach in the National Football League, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. So I'm going to go ahead and say I don't hate this and I agree with it.
It makes sense. Lions had a great year. They scored a lot.
Number 1 points per game team in the league, and he was the mastermind.
He's on the Bears.
We'll see how that works out. We talked about that. All right. Real quick. Not going to have as much time, I think, it sounds like, as I wanted to for this. But let's go over real quick. We got some crazy. It feels like the NBA trade deadline is always kind of crazy, but this year was actually insane. Let's start with the big one. February 2nd, Lakers land Luka from the Mavs in a 3-team deal. Lakers get Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris. The Mavs got Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a 2029 first-round pick. And Utah gets Jalen Hood, 2025 second-round pick. And no, make that 2 2025 second-round picks. What do you think?
Also, I want to add, I think Jalen Hood got bought out.
Did he? Probably. I think he was definitely a buyout candidate.
What do I think? I think that it's crazy. I think the Mavs are nuts. What's his name? Nico Collins?
Yes.
Hey, he is crazy for doing that.
Did you see
calling Luka fat when Zion Williamson still has a job is nuts in my head.
No, Zion's looking ripped right now though, bro. Did you see his interview recently?
Players love to know.
That's true. But did you actually see what I was gonna say? Did you see what unless I had a complete dream about that because I was fighting a migraine today. I hope I didn't just like delusionally dream that.
I remember he said he can't play back to backs, but the Pelicans don't let him.
No, that I saw, yes, but I'm already on something else. It was somebody reported that Nico Collins is getting like death threats. There's going to be protests outside. Okay, I didn't dream this. Cool. Yeah, he's getting death threats. There's going to be more security detail for him. Protest outside of the arena. This is actually insane right now. This is just sports people. I think it's a terrible trade. I do. Anthony Davis is 31 and he's injury prone. Luka Doncic is 25 and he's injury prone. But Luka Doncic is a consensus top 3 player. He's a perennial MVP candidate. Anthony Davis is a really good player, one that I really like. But I genuinely don't understand. The Lakers fleeced. They fleeced. I mean, look at what the Knicks gave up for Mikal Bridges. Look at the Kevin Durant trade. They should have gotten so much more out of this. But one thing that came out of this that I can't move on from it without mentioning. Did you see Danny Ainge? Did you see it? So, for those of you that don't know, Danny Ainge, dating back to his days with the Celtics, he almost won't make a trade unless he can fleece
Oh
someone
yes, because
involved in the
yeah, the
trade.
Jazz. Yes, he didn't even know that the
He did not
Lakers
know
were
that.
involved.
Yep. Well, he didn't know that he was helping
That's
them
right.
get Luka. Yeah, he didn't know he was helping the Lakers get Luka Doncic until I think he said like 30 minutes before. It was way
Yep.
too late, by the way. So I
Yep.
think it's hilarious that the master of fleecing kind of got fleeced because he wouldn't have done it otherwise. If he knew what was happening, he wouldn't have done that trade. So I think that is hilarious.
It's a wild trade. I don't think you. They said you can't even make that trade on NBA 2K.
No, no way, not a shot. It was definitely, I said this before the stuff really started to come out. I'm just surprised it came out as fast as it did. It was definitely a behind the scenes trade. It's very ironic because it's kind of like what happened with the Knicks and Kristaps Porzingis when they sent him to the Mavs. They didn't let anyone know that he was available, essentially, and they just kind of sent him out to the Mavs for a bunch of nothing. Now, at least the Mavs got Anthony Davis. We didn't get anybody near Anthony Davis's level when we sent Kristaps out. And Kristaps, very, very good player, borderline elite, but he's not Luka Doncic. So, yeah, the Mavs blew this big time. They did. I love their roster. I just don't love that they didn't maximize what they should have. Like, even getting Anthony Davis, they should have gotten several more for at least 2 more first round picks. At least. The next big one, which happened in the same day, the Spurs got De'Aaron Fox. They also got Jordan McLaughlin. Kings get Zach LaVine, Sydney, sorry if I say this wrong, my friend, Sissoko, a 2025 first round pick, a 2027 first rounder, a 2031 first rounder, 25 second, 28 second, 28 second. And all of this madness, the Bulls get Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and a 2025 first round pick. I think the Spurs are geniuses. De'Aaron Fox is a borderline All-NBA level talent. He's in the mid-dab smack in the middle of his prime. They get to pair him with a generational player in Victor Wembanyama. The Kings, I don't quite get this for them. They take on Zach LaVine. Yes, they get 3 first-round picks, but the only one that really seems worth it to me is the Hornets, no offense. The Spurs, I think, are going to be good, especially by 2027. And the Timberwolves is a toss-up, but as long as they still have Anthony Edwards, they'll probably be decent. I don't really get this for the Kings. I know De'Aaron Fox wasn't really happy there. And then I'm not really sure what the Bulls were doing here, other than just getting off the Zach contract, which I like that for them, mainly because they're going nowhere fast. So they're clearing some cap off their books, and that's kind of how I look at it. So the Spurs are just the big, huge winners in this. I don't know how you're feeling.
I mean, I just think it's crazy that De'Aaron left the Kings like that. That they would just give him away, but I do think this makes the Spurs contenders now. Actually, with Victor Wembanyama and Chris Paul, and Sohan. I do think that they have a actual shot to make playoffs and go somewhere within the next couple years. So I do think this is good for them, and I think this is good for the Kings as a rebuild. Be like, hey, let's just kind of take a step back. We just fired our head coach, and even though our assistant's doing good, let's let's kind of take it back a notch and see what we can do with Sabonis and who we have left on this team and Zach LaVine.
I love it for I love it for them. I really do. Real quick, you want to get some Hornets trades off your chest before we wrap up?
I got it. I gotta go.
You do? All right. Well, sorry to keep you too late, everybody. Shorter episode for us. Tune in next week. We're gonna be talking some Super Bowl, some NASCAR, and probably some more NBA. Thank you to everyone.
We'll finish this trade deadline stuff for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna talk some more NBA. Thank you to everyone that tunes in, and we will see you guys next week.